Some of the lynchings that do stand out and that did make that were a determining factor of what I was going to do with my life. I think the number one of those was the lynching of James Jones. He had just gotten out of the Army. He was a corporal and had just gotten out of the Army, had just come back to his little town in Louisiana, and was accused of trying to rob a garage. And he's arrested, and the person who owned the garage couldn't identify him. So the sheriff then released him to a lynch mob. This lynch mob was comprised primarily of policemen from that particular town and from the surrounding towns, all of them having one purpose in mind, that they were going to teach the blacks that they had to go back to where they were, become the same subservient people, observe the same rules of white is right and black get back sort of a thing that had governed the South forever. And not just the South, but it governed America practically forever. And so they took James Jones and the young 18-year-old kid that was with him and took them out into the woods there in Louisiana. And the young fellow made an attempt to escape. When they took him off the truck, he ran for it. And so one of the sheriffs shot him, but shot him in the shoulder. And the kid fell down as if he were dead. The sheriff walked over and kicked him. He didn't move, so he assumed he was dead, and went back to the job of torturing and killing James Jones. The father of this young man had followed the lynch mob and not just the father, several other people too, had followed this lynch mob so they would be able to witness what happened. And so when they went back to the torturing and killing of James Jones, the father of this young man dragged him away, put him in a car, and got him off to Texarkana, where he'd be safe. But getting back then, these sheriffs and these Klansmen, they went to work on James Jones. After they had beat him with clubs and knocked him down, they took a bullwhip and they took turns on beating this man for an hour or so. And when they got tired of that, they decided they would teach him a lesson about stealing things, took a double-bit axe and chopped off his hands. And then they took a blowtorch and used the blowtorch to staunch the blood. That is to say, when you burn an open area, it'll stop bleeding, it'll scab over and stop bleeding. So they used this blowtorch to stop the blood, and then they began burning him to death with this blowtorch. And this happened until he finally sucked in the flame and burned his lungs, and that killed him. After he had died, the lynch mob turned then to kill his wife and baby. But the blacks in the area had already gotten her out of there, and she moved to Detroit, where she was, relatively safe. But nobody who read that story of what happened, and the fact that they had these eyewitnesses, they had about 10 eyewitnesses to what took place. They identified every one of those lynchers. They turned their names and addresses over to the FBI. The FBI would do nothing. They made a special trip to Washington to make a petition to Truman. He did not have time to meet with them. He was too busy fighting for democracy in Bulgaria to even meet with them and make an effort to enforce the law. A man who was Symington, I think, at that time, or McGrath rather, at that time was the Attorney General, and his position was that blacks should be treated as the serfs in medieval times, and I'm quoting this. That McGrath says they should be chained in their abode after dark. So McGrath would do nothing about this. The Justice Department would do nothing about it. The Klan ruled. And you could either accept that and try to find some way to live with this, or you could fight it. And I know the vast majority of the African American people found ways to get along with it, right? To find ways to but there was a certain core of us who could not compromise with it, right? We had to take the next step forward in the movement for liberation and emancipation, and that meant moving away further and further away from the established political procedures and moving more and more towards towards a relatively revolutionary perspective of how to resolve the problem in the United States. It was a very dramatic moment, that period of 1945, 1946, where you had to make up your mind, which way are you going to go? Are you going to find ways to, in quotes, advance the race under the given conditions, or are you going to attack those conditions and destroy them?